At New York's bustling airport, college student Chloe arrives home and gives her mother, Irene, a quick call. She's expecting to hear details about her father's birthday celebration, but instead, she learns the party has been abruptly canceled. Her father, a commercial airline pilot, has been called in for work at the last minute. Meanwhile, television journalist Cameron Steele finds himself in an unexpected conversation with a devout Christian woman. She urges him to embrace faith, claiming that all the tragedies he covers in his career can be explained by the Bible. Chloe overhears and interjects, questioning why an all-powerful God would allow innocent people to suffer for past sins. She criticizes the notion that mysterious ways should justify pain and chaos. The woman eventually walks away, and Cameron thanks Chloe for stepping in, leading her to mention that her own mother is deeply religious as well. In the parking lot, Captain Rayford Steele, Chloe's father, discreetly removes his wedding ring before meeting with flight attendant Hattie Durham. As they step inside, Rayford is caught off guard when he spots Chloe. He immediately embraces her, but she isn't in the mood for warm reunions. Noticing his flirtatious demeanor with Hattie, she confronts him about his behavior. She already suspects her parents' marriage is crumbling, and her father's absence from his own birthday only reinforces her suspicions. Rayford defends himself, explaining that he and Irene married young, and over time they grew apart, especially after Irene's deep dive into religion. When Chloe points out that he isn't wearing his wedding ring, she also accuses him of using his flight assignment as an excuse to spend time with Hattie. Later, Chloe and Cameron decide to grab coffee together. As they talk, an airport staff member delivers 2 concert tickets to Chloe, meant as a gift for her father. Seeing the effort Rayford put into securing them confirms Chloe's suspicion. His flight assignment wasn't last minute. He had planned this all along. Frustrated, she hands the tickets to Cameron, asking him to give them to Rayford instead. As Cameron and Rayford board the flight, Chloe retrieves her father's car and discovers his wedding ring inside. She drives home, where her younger brother, Ramy, excitedly greets her. The 2 siblings catch up before Chloe sits down with their mother. The conversation starts off friendly but quickly turns tense when Chloe mentions the encounter at the airport. Irene, as expected, begins preaching, prompting Chloe to snap. Unable to deal with another religious lecture, she storms off. Looking for a distraction, Chloe takes Ramy to the mall. He expresses his concerns about their parents, but she reassures him that everything will work out. They share a comforting hug, until a sudden flash of light blinds her. When she regains her vision, she finds herself clutching nothing but Ramy's clothes. He has vanished. Around her, chaos erupts. Shoppers scream in terror as they realize loved ones have disappeared without a trace. A driverless car careens into the building, crashing through the storefronts. As Chloe peers inside, she sees a lifeless passenger slumped in the seat. Panic spreads like wildfire. Looters seize the opportunity to ransack abandoned belongings. Outside, traffic grinds to a halt as stranded vehicles block every road. Back on Rayford's flight, passengers remain oblivious to the nightmare unfolding below. Once they reach cruising altitude, Rayford sneaks away from the cockpit to meet with Hattie. He presents the concert tickets from Cameron, but before they can continue their conversation, the aircraft lurches violently. A wave of panic sweeps through the cabin as passengers discover that several among them have inexplicably vanished, leaving only their clothes behind. Rayford races back to the cockpit, only to find his co-pilot missing. Gripping the controls, he struggles to stabilize the aircraft. Meanwhile, Cameron films the unfolding hysteria. Passengers bang on the cockpit door, demanding answers, while Hattie attempts to calm them. Seeing the situation spiral out of control, Rayford increases the cabin pressure, forcing oxygen masks to deploy. The passengers, struggling to breathe, have no choice but to return to their seats. Attempting to contact air traffic control, Rayford is met with eerie silence. Even his phone is dead. Once the cabin settles, he steps out to address the passengers, urging them to remain calm. Hattie, shaken, soon realizes her fellow flight attendant is among the missing. She rushes to the cockpit for reassurance, but Rayford is just as shaken as she is. Cameron, sensing the importance of documenting this event, resumes filming. He interviews passengers, but no one saw or heard anything before the disappearances. A woman in full panic mode dashes to the restroom to snort drugs, emerging soon after, muttering that none of this is real. She scrawls the words, "It's not real," on her hand before collapsing into her seat. Religious tension flares up among the passengers. A Muslim man begins to pray, but another passenger challenges him, arguing that they worship different gods. The dispute threatens to turn violent until Rayford intervenes, announcing their immediate return to New York. Back at the mall, Chloe struggles through the frantic crowd in search of Ramy. A sudden explosion shakes the area as a small plane crashes onto the parking lot, demolishing Rayford's car. With no other option, Chloe sets off on foot. As she navigates the chaos, 2 bikers speed past and snatch Ramy's backpack from her hands. Moments later, a bridge collapses, sending a school bus plummeting into the river. Chloe races to help but finds the vehicle completely empty. Determined to reach home, she battles through the apocalyptic landscape. Cars collide, sirens wail, and looters run rampant. Upon reaching her house, she finds it eerily silent. Irene's jewelry rests in the shower and a voicemail plays only static. Spotting her mother's Bible, Chloe hurls it in frustration. Desperate for answers, she visits the local church and finds the pastor, one of the few left behind. He confesses that despite preaching the word, he never truly believed. He confirms what Chloe already suspects. This is the rapture. The missing people were taken to heaven, leaving the world to descend into darkness. Meanwhile, aboard Rayford's plane, disaster looms. A ghostly, unresponsive aircraft appears on their flight path. With no pilots on board, the abandoned plane barrels toward them. Rayford veers just in time to avoid a full collision, but their wing takes a glancing blow. As fuel begins leaking, a passenger suspects foul play and searches the Muslim man's bag, expecting to find a bomb, only to pull out an electric toothbrush. Another theorizes that aliens are responsible. Suddenly, the wing bursts into flames, sending the aircraft into a violent tremor. Rayford struggles to maintain control, while Cameron and Hattie work to prevent another passenger riot. The fire extinguishes itself, but their fuel supply is nearly depleted. Rayford makes a grim announcement. They must attempt an emergency landing long before reaching New York. On the ground, Chloe witnesses the world unravel. Meanwhile, aboard the plane, Rayford searches through his co-pilot's belongings and discovers a watch engraved with John 3:16, the Bible verse promising eternal life to those who believe in God. Hattie also gathers the personal effects of another flight attendant, uncovering a notebook filled with Bible study notes. Piecing things together, Rayford realizes that the mass disappearances could be a rapture and tells Hattie that his wife had warned them all along. Hattie, unwilling to accept this explanation, angrily walks away. In the cabin, tensions rise when a distraught woman pulls out a gun, accusing the passengers of being part of a conspiracy orchestrated by her husband to take her daughter. As Cameron tries to de-escalate the situation, another passenger, a struggling addict, recalls her time at a religious school and recognizes the event as matching biblical descriptions of the rapture, concluding that the vanished people were taken to heaven. The desperate mother, overwhelmed with grief, contemplates taking her own life. In response, Cameron shares heartfelt stories about his relationship with his mother, eventually calming the woman enough to take the gun from her. Shortly after, Rayford finally gets a response on the radio and learns that the disappearances are a global phenomenon. However, airports everywhere are in chaos, with numerous crash landings making it impossible to land safely. He's instructed to find an alternative landing site inland, but before he can argue, the radio cuts out again. Turning to Cameron, who carries a satellite phone for his reporting work, Rayford asks him to call Chloe. Cameron reveals he's been trying all day but hasn't been able to reach her. Rayford, holding a note Chloe left inside the ticket envelope, expresses his regret, admitting that his broken relationship with her wasn't Irene's fault. It was his own for shutting down every time she spoke about faith. Meanwhile, Chloe, overwhelmed by despair, climbs to the top of a bridge. Gazing out at the skyline, she quietly apologizes to her mother for the way she treated her. Just as she prepares to jump, Cameron's call finally connects. She hears Rayford's voice, and they exchange "I love yous," finally acknowledging that Irene had been right. Rayford confesses he isn't sure he can find a place to land, but before he can say more, the call drops again. However, hearing her father's voice is enough to give Chloe hope, and she rushes back into town, grabbing an abandoned bicycle to move faster. At the same time, Rayford gathers the passengers and, realizing their grim chances, encourages them to pray. As the plane begins its descent, Chloe spots an open construction site and quickly commandeers a truck to clear the debris, hoping to create an emergency landing strip. Miraculously, her phone signal returns and she is able to tell her father about the location. Since the plane's guidance system has failed, Cameron asks Chloe to use her phone's compass app to relay her exact coordinates before the call is abruptly cut off again. Cameron inputs the coordinates into his phone, giving Rayford a rough guide for navigation. However, darkness obscures visibility and the plane is nearly out of fuel. Determined to help, Chloe manages to reconnect with them once more. Rayford asks her to provide a large light source, as the truck's headlights aren't enough. Spotting some nearby gas tanks, Chloe drenches them in fuel and ignites them with a lighter, triggering a massive fireball. The towering flames become a beacon, guiding Rayford toward the landing site. As he makes his final approach, Chloe, distracted by the fire, crashes the truck. The plane clips some cables on the way down, causing turbulence, but remains stable. However, with the landing gear failing to deploy, the aircraft touches down unevenly, dragging its tail and wing along the ground. At the last moment, Rayford regains control, lifting the wing just in time to avoid hitting Chloe's truck. The plane continues to skid forward for several miles, smashing through obstacles and comes dangerously close to a massive fuel tank, but miraculously, it stops just short of disaster. As Chloe's fire erupts once more in the distance, Hattie deploys the inflatable slides, allowing the passengers to evacuate. Chloe runs to embrace both Cameron and Rayford, who finally acknowledges that he should have never left his family behind. In a symbolic gesture, she hands him both his and Irene's wedding rings. Together, they turn toward the burning cityscape, watching the destruction unfold. Cameron solemnly remarks that this could be the end of the world, but Chloe, with renewed determination, believes it's only the beginning.